moment, calm my raging sea. Walk with me through fire and heal all my disease. I trust in you, Lord. I trust in you. I believe you're my healer. I believe you are all I need. Oh, yes, you are, Jesus. I believe you're my portion. I believe you're more than enough.
Welcome, listeners. It's another day to be grateful for the mercies of God. They are constant and they are sure. Welcome to another Heart to Heart talk show, a special in studio production. Tonight we have a special guest, Andrew St. Michael Folks, dance hall artist turned Christian. Is it possible for God to pull men and women from the dance hall into the church, clean them up, to save them, to give them a focus, a purpose? We're going to be hearing about the pain of Andrew. He has been pulled out of the world and he has given birth to a book, The Power of Pain, my breakthrough. And it's unusual for men to admit pain. Men, we keep a whole lot of stuff on the inside. We never tell anybody, and then we become like pressure cookers and we explode one day. But we want to hear. Andrew, folks, welcome to the Heart to Heart Talk Show.
Good night. Good night, everybody. And it's a pleasure being here. Thanks for, facilitating me.
Yes. Andrew, you were in the dance hall. Somebody's asking now, who is Andrew Folks? What was the name that you used when you were in the dancehall scenes?
Okay, so as a dancehall artist and songwriter, because I've written for a lot of artists also, I went by the name, which I still go by also, Blaaz. That's what I was known as a dancehall artist. I started, music is a passion of mine, really. I started music from Sunday school. That's when I found out that I had that talent. And right through high school, it was always either music or football. So I was a very good footballer also. But I drew more, to music. And after leaving high school, I pursued music professionally. But I really got that break in dancehall, I think, 2013, when I had one of the biggest songs on radio in Jamaica at the time. That was a song called Tax Everything. I've written for Bounty Killer, for The Angel, for Luton Fire, for Ghost, for Mr. Pepper, for a lot of artists, a lot of dancehall artists.
Yes. So dancehall artist Blaaz is now blazing up the place for Jesus. Somebody might want to know, Andrew, where are you really from? Where were you born?
Okay, so I grew up between Clarendon and Kingston. I grew up on a export farm in Clarendon with my father and my stepmom. It was known as the ADC farm, basically. They used to export stuff like papaya and bitter melon to places like Japan and China. My mother was always in Kingston, so on holidays I'd, be in Kingston with my mom. I went to the St. Thomas More Preparatory School in Clarendon, passed my GSAT, and I started Clarendon College. I did 7th and 8th grade in Clarendon College before moving to Kingston with my mom, and I started the Excelsior High School there.
Yes. How did you get exposed to the dancehall industry?
As I said, music was always a passion of mine. I remember in 7th grade, being at Clarendon College, that's the introductory period where, your form teacher asks, what you want to become. everybody would stand and it would be the typical, I want to be a doctor, I want to be a nurse, I want to be a teacher. I stood up and I said that I want to be a dancehall artist. It was something that I knew. I always had that drive, that passion, that love for music. So it wasn't even the genre. It wasn't so much about the genre, what be dancehall, gospel, or whatever. It was just music for me overall.
What was it about that particular dancehall genre, as you say, that eventually started to write for? What was it that attracted you?
Um, so I grew up in church, really. I held my first mic in Sunday school. And I think, like most Jamaican children, at some point, whether you grow up in church or not, starting high school and meeting new friends, being exposed to different environments, it leads to you wanting to experience life on a different whole perspective. And as such, I started, drifting from what I was accustomed to, which was church, and, started to venture off into, stuff that my friends were exposed to. Dancehall, I think for me it was, so it's not dancehall like today, because for me, when I was growing up, dancehall actually meant something. Like you could actually listen to a song and it was meaningful, and so I grew up on artists like Buju Banton was one of my favorite artists, still is. Beenie Man, Shaggy, Professor Nuts. I like storytelling. And so it's just, I appreciate the fact that it gives the opportunity to express yourself
Yeah.
freely.
So growing up in church, I get the feeling maybe you grew up in a very conservative, strict kind of church that never allowed you to, listen to those type of music.
All right, so my father was a extreme disciplinarian, so the only time we could listen dancehall music was, we'd get the cassettes at that time, because I'm an 80s child, so I'm late 80s, and so we'd get the cassettes at that time when they weren't home, and we'd play that. We really was, but at that time it was really like Shaggy and those type of artists who were actually the at the forefront of dancehall. So it wasn't really vulgar, to the extent that it is today. But we grew up in church. My father never went to church. The first time I saw my dad going to a church was at my grandmother's funeral. But he made it his point of duty every Sunday to bring me and my brothers to church. Which today it is something that I really, I grew up to appreciate.
Yes, yes. So you grew up and then you started to write for some of these artists. How did they get to know of your talent though, at that level, writing for those type of art?
It's really a funny story. So when I moved to Kingston, because I left Clarendon College because of, struggles. So in chapter 1 of my book, it speaks to some of the struggles that I was going through as a child. I was exposed to gangs and guns, while I was
Clarendon?
in high school in 7th grade, really.
Wow.
Yeah, and so based on the direction that they saw me going at the time and my unhappiness, a decision was made for me to move to Kingston with my mom, which was what I ultimately wanted at the time. Um, None of my parents were fans of me wanting to become a dancehall artist, because I was always a very, above average child, academically, really. And so it was the typical, we wanted to become a lawyer, or, to fulfill your academical potential. But while going to Excelsior in 9th grade, I started venturing off to studios. So after, school had dismissed, I'd actually be in half a tree, walking the corporate area, finding different studios, networking with different artists, just hanging out at the studios at that time, because it wasn't really a thing where, you know, school schoolers, as they would call it, could actually go into a studio and record. But I was very determined. And so I just started going to studios regular after school. I made it a habit. Every evening after school, I went to the studio. And so I became known. And I just be there because, as I say, I loved writing from going to prep school, really. I knew I was good at writing stories. I was a good storyteller. And so I just started writing at the time. Yeah, there are a lot of artists who started appreciating, because as a grade 9 student, I was always above average in terms of my lyrical content. And so that was something that was quickly noticed by a lot of veteran artists. And, you know, I started writing songs. The first artist I actually wrote a song for really was The Angel. That's Beenie Man's ex-wife. She was the first artist I actually wrote a song for. And from there, and I remember when Bounty Killer and Vibes Cartel, you know, in 2009, they were actually going at it lyrically. I was actually writing for Bounty Killer at that time also.
Okay. So, Andrew, give us an insight, the lifestyle that surrounds the dancehall culture. What is that typical lifestyle
All
that
right, so at first, the love for music drew me to dancehall. I'm a lover and a fan of music overall. However, I think dancehall it's not conducive to healthy living, to morals and values. It's really not the lifestyle. What is expected is not. It contradicts, you know, how I was raised. And I remember after getting my first big song, you know, things were really good. But then, so that the more popular you become, the more drawn certain elements are to you as a person. And so I've always been, from high school, a very influential person. I've always been a leader. And in dancehall, when I found that breakthrough song, I realized that the direction that things were going, it was really, if I didn't take hold of myself at the time, it would have been a bad end for me because I was around a lot of drugs and I was around a lot of guns. Something that I can personally remember was, well, there are 3 incidents I can remember. One was I was going to do a show, a performance at Clarendon College, and the night where we were about to leave out for the performance, well, we left out for the performance and there were like maybe 4 illegal guns in the car that I was actually traveling in. And at the time I was really going to the venue, and I remember, because normally when I'm going to a performance, I think about, you know, what I'm going to do, how I'm going to start. But all I could think about that night was if a police should actually stop the vehicle. You know, remember that they have a thing that, you know, in law, possession is 9/10 of the law. So 5 persons in a car, there's 1 gun, all 5 persons get charged. And so that was something that I thought about. That was one incident. I remember there was an next performance I had. And just as we were about to drive out for that performance, we got a call that, you know, we should stay put because there was a hit placed out on members of my camp. You know, a hit was placed out to take out some members of my camp. And so we had to stay put, and, you know, everybody had to be on the defensive at the time. Another thing that I remember was my manager. We went to a party. The first big song I recorded for him. I remember one night we went to a party, and, you know, he was a influential underground figure, and he took me to his car. And I remember he popped out his glove compartment and he placed a brand new, extremely brand new 9mm in my hand and say, "Oh, this is yours. This is your gift," you know. And I sat in the car for like 5 minutes and I looked at it and I said, "Oh, I'm good, man." You know, I had to like find a story to I say, "Oh, just lock it off for me," you know, just lock it off for me because I never want to bring that to him. You understand? I know the direction that things could have gone and I never want to bring it to him. So I found a story, just lock it off for me. And then the final thing that really made me decide to, this is not my life, was there was a particular night when I was with my entourage and we were at, where we'd hang out. When we were driving to the community, I remember he made a call, he was my road manager, and he made a call and he said, "Yo, the artists are coming and rise everything." And when we got there were more than 150 guns surrounding me. Yeah. And I was sitting in the middle because in their minds, they were protecting the artists, you know? But in my head, it was, what if a shootout should happen? What if police should run in? Like what would happen tonight to me if something like that should happen. And I really had to just pull back at the time. I started becoming very uncomfortable. So I'd go to studios, but that desire, the love for music just started to, to falter basically, because it was no longer about just loving music. It was music with a whole lot of different things, a lot of different things associated with it. And so I had to just find myself at the time, really. And so I just made a conscious decision in June 2014 to just, take away myself from dancehall.
Mm. So you're surrounded, you said, by the gun culture, which I believe perhaps fed by fear. Is it that they fear that somebody would take out the artist, or is it
It's
what
it,
feeds that culture of guns?
it's so it's not even a fear that someone will take out the artist, it's really a thing. Street cred is really something that is extremely important to a dancehall artist, a hardcore dancehall artist. So a Shaggy and a Sean Paul doesn't need the streets or an entourage, but a hardcore lyrical dancehall artist for street cred, you know, that is needed. Because in the dancehall culture, the more masculine, the more masculine of an image that you portray, I think the bigger the fan base,
Mm. The
so
Batman culture.
that is it.
Okay. So you were surrounded also by the drugs culture. You saw drug running all around you. A
Yeah,
lot of
that
artists, did a lot of artists use drugs?
no man. So I really so in terms of that, it was really my circle. Nothing that I really can go really in depth in,
Yeah.
but yeah, it was associated, with my circle, and I had to just God took me out really,
Yeah. But
you
there's
know.
also the girls. I'm sure maybe a lot of women would have thrown themselves at you or
Yeah, definitely. Like that was really a thing to us. As I said, so females are just naturally attracted to success, and potential. Like a female can actually spot raw potential in you without you seeing it in yourself. That's something I've grown. Like I personally have witnessed that. And
yeah.
so you don't even need a hit song for girls to actually come at you in dancehall. Once you have an image and they see that you're him going go somewhere, like it's yeah. So that's really a thing. So it was really a mixture of everything. So if you're not strong mentally, you're going to lose yourself. So when you have power, you have influence, you have girls, you have guns, you have entourage, all of that destroys the individual.
And of
So
course a lot of money. You would have seen a lot of money floating around.
definitely life wasn't hard.
Yeah. Because that shows I know artists have to be paid on the night,
No, well, you're paid before an event still.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But the artist, well, when I manage a certain event, the artist would collect their money on the night before the show. They're not performing without that money, whether
Okay,
they
okay.
whether
Yeah,
they
the
pay.
night before. Yeah, well,
Yeah,
that's
so a lot
true.
of money runs in the industry. So in the midst of all of this, Andrew, there was a call on your heart to serve God. When did that begin? That crossover. I know you were exposed to God from an early age, but when did that transition happen for you? What was the breaking point?
I think, as I said, the last incident where that night, the all the guns that were around me that night, that really I think it wasn't something that I really spoke about to a lot, to persons, but it was something that was on my mind, because that night, and all I could say to myself that night was there were more than 150 guns around me that night personally.
Mm.
If police, if if the military and the JDF, happened to pass through that night, there wouldn't have been any mercy. And that was something I sat there and I just kept on thinking about that. And that really, I think that started the discomfort for me, you know. And I think it was really just after that. It was like a month after that, I just, oh, God took me out of dancer.
Mhm.
And 6 months after I got baptized June 2014.
Yeah.
6 months after that, like 5 persons that I would normally par with daily died
Mm.
by the gun also.
I had to go on. What were some of the changes you saw in your life after giving your heart to the Lord?
The changes were very bad, man. It wasn't like good changes at first, because I was being sought after, sorry. Because it was said that I knew too much. Being, having a manager who was who was a very influential underground figure. I was actually being sought after, making the decision to give my life to God. I had to be in hiding, for God had hiding for, some time and stuff like that. And it was a very rough first year. There were days I thought I was going to die. I was upset because I had my freedom being Blaaz and then deciding to serve God. I had to be in hiding and stuff like that. You know, my wife was pregnant with my my daughter at the time. I knew only dancehall. I'd never worked a 9 to 5 to get an income at the time. Dancehall was the income. And as such, having a wife who was pregnant and having to be in hiding, depending on persons, to provide. It was a very rough period for me personally, mentally, physically, and emotionally also. But it was a time also where I had to be reading the word of God. I had to be in like serious fasting. So it was bad, but it was good for my spiritual life also.
Yes, and of course, you'd have packed all of that pain and brokenness and breakthrough into your book. Walk us through this book. There are about 8 chapters you say in this book. Walk us, give us an idea when persons purchase this book. And folks, if you're just watching, we're talking to Andrew St. Michael, folks, dancehall artist turned Christian, and he has written a book, The Power of Pain, and my pain, my breakthrough. Walk us through these chapters, an idea of
O-
what.
Okay, so the book was called The Power of Pain. How the book really came about. I remember 2014, I went to a church, and it was a church in Mandeville I was actually attending at the time. And just as I walked up the step, I remember a minister walking over to me, and he said to me, he said, "Bro, I have a word for you." And I said, God said to tell you that you're going to write 7 books and you're going to put out 7 albums. So that was the first word that I got, that I was going to write, because I never see myself as a author writing a book. I always saw myself doing music, but not writing a book really. In December 2018, I was sleeping, and around 2 o'clock, I woke up with just the title in my head, The Power of Pain. And I got a notebook, and I just wrote the title on it, The Power of Pain. That was really it. The day after that, I got the song, and I started writing the book in 2019, and I stopped. But then January of this year, I basically, it was a rough patch, a very, very rough period for me. And there was a day I just sat on my veranda, and the title just came back to mind, and I started writing at that time. The Power of Pain, from chapters 1 to 8. So 8 means new beginning, really. So there are 8 chapters in the book. Chapter 1 basically details the early challenges and painful experiences I went through. Growing up, it was rejection. There was neglect. There was feeling out of place around my siblings. I was a stepson to my stepmother, and stuff like that. And it wasn't a very good relationship. So I grew up being very angry. I was always a very angry person. Never used to talk. I was very antisocial. And anger just kept on building up in me throughout the years. And so in high school, in 7th grade, I joined a gang just to fit in somewhere, which led to me holding my first firearm. I held my first gun in 7th grade, because of the gang, the associating with a gang and stuff. So chapter 1 basically details the early part of my struggles, my pain. And you'd have a chapter now, like chapter 4, which serves to show that the importance of my daughter in my life, really. The birth of my daughter was, with everything that I went through, the birth of my daughter was really the first light for me. It was that little bundle of joy, and to this day, she still is that person for me. So the importance of my daughter in my life, how that basically motivated me to push through. what the birth of my daughter did for me, you know. And then you'd have the last chapter, which is titled The Power of Pain. It showed readers that the book was written in the present. It was not a book that was written in the past tense, because I was writing as I was going through. So the earlier experiences were, you know, things that I had already gone through. But as I was writing the book, you know, going up in the chapters, I was actually facing some of the challenges that are in the book. And so the power of pain is shown in chapter 8, that I basically show readers that, listen, I was writing this book whilst going through all of this. And that is the power of pain. The power of pain for me is finding that last drop of strength to push forward when giving up is really just the easiest thing to do, you know? And so that is what readers will get. If I should sum up the power of pain, if I should sum up this book in one word, it would be perseverance. If anything at all readers can get from this book, it is perseverance. I'm somebody who has gone through, still going through a lot, you know, a lot. I am not a very expressive person. I don't really express myself really. I internalize mostly. But there's one thing that I realize with myself is that I've been through a lot, going through a lot, but I still push, you know.
Yeah.
Even when I feel like I'm at like my lowest point, it's just that like give up is just not a part of me. And that's the one thing that, you know, reading the book you can get. I've been pushing, you know, how to persevere, how to
Yeah.
push forward no matter what you're going through. That is what persons will get from
And
this book.
somebody's watching now and they might be wondering, how can I get this book, or how can I get also Andrew to speak at my event? So talk to us. How can we access this book?
Okay, so I've organized and organizing a book tour. As you can see behind me, the flyers. So it's an all island book tour where I'm basically reaching out to different ministries, different companies, community outreach programs, events that would actually facilitate me coming in, sharing my story, and persons would be able to purchase a book. So it's an all island book tour. It's called the Power of Pain All Island Book Tour. And you know, as we go along, we try to get dates from different churches, different companies and stuff. So I'm actually reaching out to churches across Jamaica, companies across Jamaica to reach out. You can reach out by contacting me at 1-876-216-1897. And you can email me at thepowerofpainbiz@gmail.com. That's thepowerofpainbiz@gmail.com. And I've created a YouTube channel also where all my contents, my songs will be uploaded. And that's The Power of Pain TV on YouTube. And also on Instagram, it's the full stop Power of Pain.
Yes. Do you plan to have any electronic download, maybe through Amazon or any
So the
online?
book is actually available on Amazon. It is on Amazon also. So it's in
Nice.
Kindle and paperback on Amazon. And I have, as is right now, we are trying to sell 500 copies. So I have 500 hard copies, and the cost per book is $2,000. So we are trying to sell 500 copies, you know, before December ends, really.
Andrew St. Michael, folks, here on the Heart to Heart Talk Show. Folks, we thank you for listening. We invite you to visit Amazon right now and to support this young man and to contact him on the numbers that have been given. It is a miracle every time we hear that somebody has been delivered from the dance hall culture. And he has just pointed out the girls, the guns, the drugs, all the things that go with that. Is very, very alluring, very hard to get out of. But we thank you for watching. Thank you, Andrew, for coming in on the Heart to Heart Talk Show.
Thank you for having me again.
Yes, let's
And
close. Yes, go ahead.
yeah, I just want to encourage persons to, you know, reach out and get a copy of the book. It's a good read. And I hope that, you know, reading the book, it gives, you know, renewed strength, renewed energy to push forward, basically.
Yes, we end with Isabel Davis, Healer.
you